Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can hear me. There we go. We've done the sound check. I had to do the sound check. Okay, so today we're going to be discussing the block size wars, which occurred in 2015 to 2017. However, the block size wars go back literally to the day, or the block size issue goes back literally to the day that Satoshi Nakamoto published his white paper, which was the 8th of November 2008. In the very first reply to his post to the white paper was from a gentleman called James Donald, and he said, "We very, very much need such a system, i.e., Bitcoin, but the way I understand your proposal, it does not seem to scale at the required size." Now, this has been an issue for Bitcoin, for the community, and for the chain for a very long time, even before the Genesis block on the 3rd of January 2009. Just before we go in any more, I just want to quickly just check who's in the chat. So we've got Crypto Polio. We have Silver Days XRP. And we have Rob C, a fellow Brit in the house. We have Lasers. We have David. Bless you, David. We have Chipper. We have Doge Ball. We have JC. We have Black Hat Team, who has been helping me with the Princess Discord. Do feel free to sign up to the Discord, the Telegram, and do follow me on X as well. So after today's live stream, we will be in the Discord and we will have an after show, and everyone is welcome to join. We have MetaMask and Cool Buddy. We have Mr. Alex Storyteller, who's absolutely amazing to us. We have Crypto Kanjan, and we have 220 with us, and we've got Lauren. So 220 and Lauren. I love those two. They're absolutely amazing together. Oh, and look, he said hi to Lauren. We have, who's that? Christopher. Welcome, Christopher. I think that's about it at the moment. Right, okay, so let's get into this. Now, the reason why it's important to know about Bitcoin and the blockchain wars is because it directly affects us. And a lot of people, towards the end of the wars, I will tell you what size 1, a lot of people did actually lose money. And I'll get to that very, very soon. I'll get to that soon. Okay, so the key concerns raised was the scalability issue. Now, for those people who are unaware, scalability refers to how Bitcoin will handle large volumes of transactions. That's scalability. So James, question whether every node would be required to process every transaction, and if that was realistic at scale with such high volumes, bearing in mind at this time Bitcoin was seen as a payment solution rather than a monetary solution. And now I feel like it's a solution for humanity. This comment, literally the first response to Bitcoin, response to Bitcoin would later tear the community apart because many other people felt the same. How should Bitcoin scale? Should all nodes verify all transactions? Or should the network sacrifice some of them to allow bigger blocks, more throughput? Just very quickly, I see Strive. Good morning, Strive, or good day, and John Legend. And thank you, John, for leaving all the comments you do under my videos. I actually know what everybody does in the community, and I really do appreciate each and every one of you. Now, even before the block size wars, Satoshi himself changed or added to the code the 1 MB megabytes block size. So Satoshi Nakamoto added the 1 megabyte block size limit to Bitcoin on the 15th of July 2010, about a year and a half after Bitcoin's launch. Originally, Bitcoin had no hard code block size, meaning blocks could be very, very large. However, as interest in the project grew, Satoshi became concerned about the potential of a denial of service attack. Without a cap, an attacker could flood the network with enormous blocks full of junk, which could overload the blockchain, slow down validation, and potentially crash nodes running the limited hardware. To prevent this, Satoshi himself, in 2010, a year and a half later, introduced the 1 megabyte limit. 1 megabyte limit, effectively limiting the number of transactions per block. This move was not presented as a permanent design decision, however, a temporary safeguard. In fact, Satoshi acknowledged that the limit could be raised later if needed. In August 2021, he wrote in the BitTalk forums, he wrote, "We can phase in a change later if we get closer to needing it." So if we needed more, a larger block. At the time, Bitcoin's usage was still minimum. The blocks were far from reaching its limit. Ironically, this defense measure, quietly implemented for technical protection, became the central point of argument in the Bitcoin community years later, which sparked the Bitcoin wars. After Satoshi disappeared, the block size limit stayed in place, and over time, it came to represent a bigger debate on how and Bitcoin should be used and how secure and decentralized it should be. Welcome to you. Okay, so Satoshi, we all know Satoshi left. Satoshi left either at late 2010 or early 2011. By 2011, what Satoshi had done was he had handed over most of the control to developers like Gavin Anderson. Gavin Anderson, and obviously he stopped communicating publicly himself. The exact reason for him leaving is unknown, but we think he did it to protect the Bitcoin code and protect the blockchain. Satoshi posted Gavin's email on the BitTalk forum late 2010 or early 2011, and that was seen by many as him being the new leader to take over Bitcoin after Satoshi left. Now, it was Gavin became one of the leaders of Bitcoin, and in 2015, so a couple of years later, he proposed increasing the Bitcoin 1 MB, 1 megabyte block size limit to help the network handle more transactions as usage grew. Now, what was 2015? So we had 2011, which was a halving year, 2013, which was a bull run year, the first bull run in Bitcoin's history. 2014 was the bear market, and 2015 was the recovery year. Gavin specifically supported raising the block size limit to 8 megabytes initially and then doubling it every 2 years. Because the block size was a basic rule, this disagreement excelled to the block size wars with heated discussions, competing software versions, and ultimately a split in the community. The community split into big blockers and small blockers. Now, the big blockers who supported Gavin, they were mainly businessmen, they were miners, they were the people who were who had a vested interest in Bitcoin, in the sense that they were trying to make it into a business, they were trying to get money from it, and they wanted bigger block sizes for faster, cheaper transactions. And who do I see here? Poman, welcome. So they were the supporters. They were with Gavin. Gavin himself, the heir to Satoshi, was a big blocker. Now the opponents. These were mainly nerds. They were geeks. They were developers. They were worried that the bigger blocks would centralize the network and reduce security and decentralization. Why? Because today me and you can run a node on our computers. If we had, if the block size had increased to, or was increased to 8 megabytes, they were worried that not average Joe wouldn't be able to run the software. Right, so moving forward, we probably need to cover some Bitcoin terminology. So for those people who are new to Bitcoin technology, let's talk about nodes. What's a node? We will come to miners and developers and Bitcoin Core later, and we'll cover all of that technology. We'll cover all of that terminology and what they are later. But let's talk about Bitcoin nodes. Now, I do have a short on my on the YouTube channel that covers a Bitcoin node. A Bitcoin node is simply a computer that runs Bitcoin software and helps keep the network running by checking and sharing information about transactions and blocks. My hair's really wet. It's wet from the top and it's dry from the bottom. I got caught in the rain. The most important type of node is a full node, which downloads the entire history of the blockchain and checks each and every transaction to make sure it follows the rules. And this is what helps keep Bitcoin secure and decentralized. A light node doesn't download the entire blockchain. It relies on full nodes for information, but it's faster and less secure. Anyone can run a full node on a basic computer as long as it has enough storage space and stays online often. Full nodes are important because they help protect the network and give users more privacy and control. Running a node is different from mining. I better say that now. Running a node is very different from mining. Nodes help reinforce or enforce the law, the rules, and validate transactions, but they don't create new Bitcoins or process blocks. Because of this, they don't receive block awards or money incentive or transaction fees. So just very quickly, Lauren, why did you put on 1 second? I'm just gonna upload. Okay. Behind. It's so funny. So we have Carl, welcome. We have Jesse and Dave Digital. Guys, please do hit the like. It does help me out. It does help the channel out. So yeah, please do hit the like. Awesome. If there's any lurkers, guys, just say hi. Like, you don't have to do anything else. Just say hi so I can shout you out and I just like know who's there. Okay, so that's a node. So we've just discussed nodes. We haven't discussed anything else. A node can be run by anyone. It's just a piece of software. It helps secure the blockchain and it makes sure all the blocks are following all of the rules, etc. Now, what do the small blockers want? And think about this. If you were in this situation, would you be a large blocker or a small blocker? So a small blocker, they wanted to keep the 1 megabyte block size, or some of them did want to increase it, but very cautiously, but mainly they wanted to keep the 1 megabyte block size. They said that they could use off-chain solutions like the Lightning Network to scale, which was in existence at the time. They prioritized decentralization, node accessibility, and long-term security. And they wanted to avoid any changes that would centralize Bitcoin by making it harder to run a full node. Their core beliefs basically were that big blocks would lead to centralizations as fewer people will be able to run the nodes. Bitcoin was a digital gold rather than a payments solution and better to scale conservatively and protect the monetary properties. Blockchains don't scale well at all. So as we all know, we now have layer 2s. So they were thinking about scaling on layer 2, leave Bitcoin as it is, and scale on layer 2s. The large blockers, so these were mainly business people. They wanted to increase the block size because it's better for business. A lot more transactions can take place. You can buy your coffee with Bitcoin faster, quicker, all the rest of it. They wanted to keep scaling on the chain to support more users, lower fees, and faster confirmations. They wanted to ensure Bitcoin remains usable as a peer-to-peer digital cash, as Satoshi originally described, but more like Visa or PayPal, if that makes sense. Bitcoin, their core beliefs were Bitcoin should be accessible to the average person, like Visa, PayPal, etc., but be decentralized. High fees and slow confirmations hurt adoption, and on-chain scaling was more straightforward and user-friendly than layer 2. The groups that operated Bitcoin, there's several groups that actually operate Bitcoin, or they have their own interests. Maybe operate is the wrong word. They have their own interests and ideology and all their own incentives. And we're going to look into these groups because every single group had something to say. So we're going to be looking at, today we'll be looking at the miners, the developers, the exchanges, the node operators, which I've already spoken about slightly. So I told you what a node was, and it's people like us, the node operators, and then obviously the end users, which would be real estate. Now, every single person, all of them, so the miners, developers, and exchanges all thought that they had the final say in what happens to Bitcoin. It's so funny because when you actually look at the Bitcoin wars, they all thought that they were alpha. They all thought everybody should listen to them. So the miners, before we discuss what the miners wanted, what are miners? Well, miners have specialist computers that secure the Bitcoin network. They compete, because Bitcoin is proof of work, they compete to solve complicated mathematical problems. The first miner to solve these problems gets to add the next block onto the blockchain, and in return, they earn block rewards, new Bitcoins and transactions. I believe at the moment, obviously every block is being mined 10 minutes. Blocks are being mined every 10 minutes, and the block award is just over 3 Bitcoin. And I think back then it was something like 20, maybe 25. I'm not entirely sure, or maybe 13, 12, 13. I'm not entirely sure. Still a huge amount of Bitcoin. Miners make their work ensures that transactions are valid and irreversible, and they make Bitcoin trustless, so no central authority is needed. Mining requires a significant amount of computing power and electricity. In the block size wars, many miners supported larger blocks to increase potential free revenue for themselves. Bitcoin mining happens worldwide, but some regions dominate due to cheaper energy. So we have spoken a lot about Iran on this channel, and how in 2021 they had 5% of the mining supply. China as well had a huge amount of mining supply. El Salvador now is building mines around a volcano. So this volcano will be supplying all of the electricity for the mines. Is absolutely fascinating once you get into miners and the technology that they use, etc. But miners thought, back with the Bitcoin, during the Bitcoin war, or civil war of 2015 to 2017, that because they were the ones who were supporting, running, adding blocks to the blockchain, it was them. You ask them, what are they going to run? Are they going to run this particular blockchain or that particular blockchain? Which blockchain they're going to call Bitcoin, etc. So they thought it was them. So what was miners' role in the civil war? Miners were essentially a network, because they secure it and they keep it running, and they play a major role in running Bitcoin. Without miners, you couldn't have a Bitcoin network. During the debate, many miners supported increasing the block size, because it would allow more transactions per block, leading to higher fees and greater profits for them. So I'm not being funny, but when I was reading up about this, it did feel like the miners were in it for themselves. Some large, I should probably say here, because I think, just in case anybody gets confused, another way to mine is, so I can buy a miner, or you can buy a miner. It's loud, it's noisy, it's very, you don't want it in your house, but we can buy a miner, and you can run a miner individually. But when I'm talking about the miners of this war, I'm talking about the people who had access to the pools, or who ran the pools. And what that basically means is, when you get together, either they'll have their own miners, or they would just pull together the energy around, and they would literally have such a massive hash rate, if that makes sense. I'm just going to come back to the chat in a second. Before I do, some of the large mining companies like Bitmain, and you'll find out what happened to Bitmain in the end. They backed proposals like Bitcoin Ultimate, Bitcoin Cash, which aims to raise the block size limit. However, other miners were hesitant in supporting changes without clear community consensus, especially when they risk splitting the network. And if they were to go off to the wrong network, they would obviously be losing money. So miners didn't control, while miners didn't control Bitcoin's rules outright, they supported or they opposed the certain versions of the software that had a big influence on what Bitcoin would survive after a fork. Because at this time, back in 2015, they were talking about soft forks and hard forks without actually knowing what they were. So all of this was up in the air. The miners did not want to lose money, if that makes sense. It was only after the DAO attack in, I think it was 2016, I think it was the next year, we had the DAO attack in Ethereum that the miners were even more cautious, if that makes sense. And the developers and the exchanges, etc., didn't rely on the miners as much, or didn't take, kind of knew that they were after their own profits. Ultimately, the war showed that miners are very, very powerful, and indeed they are, but they still depend on the wider community, especially node operators and users. Overall, miners are business-minded people. They earn revenue through block rewards and transactions fees. From their perspective, increasing the block size meant fitting more transactions per block, which will lead to higher fees and greater profits. Remember, miners don't only get paid block rewards, they also get paid for transactions as well, the transactions that they do. Because of these incentives, many miners, especially large operators like Bitmain, supported proposals to raise the block size limit. The larger blocks could reduce congestion on the network and potentially increase the transaction volume, which will boost their income. The financial motive was a major reason why many miners backed the big block camp during the Bitcoin wars. Welcome, Harp. It's good to see you. Welcome, BC. I hope you're well. Pac-Man. Welcome. Hornet. Don't give anything away. Oh my gosh. Hornet knows things. Alexandra G, welcome. Our mod queen. I hope you're well. Oh, Pac-Man, you're British. Oh, I didn't know that. All set, welcome. Welcome, Andrew. I hope you're well. Oh, and Bullduck, welcome. Bullduck's been helping around the Discord, which is amazing. I really do appreciate my community. So that was the miners. So we've spoken about the nodes, what a node is. Node operators can be literally pretty much anyone and everyone. We've just spoken about the miners. let's talk about the Bitcoin developers. And then we'll go on to exchanges. Now, all of these different people, all of these different people really did think that they knew what was best for Bitcoin. And I am actually really, really glad that the Bitcoin wars ended the way that they did, because there were several times where it was going to end completely differently. Okay, so Bitcoin developers are people who write, maintain, and improve the software that runs on the Bitcoin network. They play a crucial role in keeping Bitcoin secure, efficient, decentralized, but very importantly, Bitcoin developers do not control Bitcoin. Any changes that they propose must be accepted by the wider community, especially the miners and the node operators. They fix bugs, they improve the performance, and they propose new features or upgrades. They focus heavily on security, stability, and decentralization, but again, they cannot force changes. Users and node operators choose whether or not to run the new code. The Bitcoin core team releases updates to improve the software, but it's up to the individual node operators to install them. This is a voluntary process, ensuring that control stays distributed across the network. So with Bitcoin developers, they'll put out there a new software, and they'll be like, look, this software tackles a bug, or it does something else, or blah de blah de blah. And then it's up to the node operators to know whether or not they're going to run it. So it's not, they don't, and the miners as well. So they don't control the Bitcoin at all. And the miners don't control Bitcoin at all. And I'll tell you who doesn't control the Bitcoin, the exchanges, although the exchanges, they really got their bloody nose, because grassroots told them that you don't control Bitcoin in the civil war of 2015 and 2018. Oh my God, the exchanges, what can I say about them? Okay, the CryptoSex, which stands for Centralized Exchange, is a company or a platform that allows users to buy, sell, or trade cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. Examples include Coinbase. Now, Coinbase, which is obviously backed by Silicon Valley, had a lot to say in the Bitcoin wars, and if I'm completely honest, they came out really, really bad in the history books. These exchanges hold users' funds and private keys, and it makes it easy for users, for average Joe, for normal people, retail, to access crypto without needing to manage their wallets, or they can manage their wallets and take them into cold storage. They provide liquidity, and it's easier for people to buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrencies on a centralized exchange. Most exchanges wanted a Bitcoin version with a higher block capacity, so Bitcoin can become a payment solution like Visa and PayPal. Why? Because it will increase the revenue of exchanges, and exchanges were business people. So they did not really care about Satoshi's vision. Exchanges did want larger blocks and business, because they were business-minded people with short-term mindsets. So if we go back, actually, with exchanges, so during the block size war, many central exchanges acted out of self-interest and profit motivation. They pushed hard for larger blocks, because bigger blocks meant more transactions to be processed on chain, which it would lower fees and speed up transactions, but it would make more profits for them. It would attract more customers, and it would increase trading volumes, again directly boosting their profits. Rather than focusing on Bitcoin's long-term security and decentralization, these exchanges prioritize short-term gains and user convenience. By controlling which version of Bitcoin was available to users, exchanges became powerful players in the block size war, often supporting the size that promised bigger blocks, showing how greedy their role was, how greedy they were. They actually came out so bad when I was reading up about them. To me, they just came out so bad. Oh my god. 1 second, let me just quickly just check up on the chat. Right, okay. So we had the small blockers who were needy, geeky people, but they cared. They cared about Satoshi's vision. They cared about decentralization. They were like the cyberpunks. And then we had the large blockers who wanted to make Bitcoin into more of a, a continuation of Visa and PayPal, and to go down that line, because most of them were business people and they knew that they would be able to profit out of it. Now, during the block size war, multiple projects were put forward to scale Bitcoin by increasing the block size or improving transaction capability. Each one faced fears from the community. Each one had things that the community feared. So we had the first thing, and I think Gavin Addison put forward. Remember, Gavin Addison was the so-called heir to Satoshi, because Satoshi took off his email address and he put up Gavin Addison's email address instead, wherever his email address was. I can't remember. Gavin Addison proposed Bitcoin XT, and that proposed a large immediate jump to 8 megabytes blocks, aiming to scale quickly. However, adding storage to that as they go along. However, many fear that this would lead to a centralization, because bigger blocks required more storage and bandwidth, making it harder for individuals to run full nodes. And the whole idea behind Bitcoin is to make it decentralized. Another project that was put forward was Bitcoin Classic. And this suggested a moderate increase to 2 megabytes blocks as a compromise from the large blockers. Still, opponents worried that even this small increase could gradually centralize the network, increasing the risk of few powerful players controlling the validation. There was also Bitcoin Unlimited. Yep. So in between 2015 and 2020, 2015 and 2017, all of these projects were put forward, and they were all Bitcoin. They wanted these projects to take over from Bitcoin, hard fork them. Bitcoin Unlimited offered a flexible Bitcoin size controlled by the miners and nodes themselves, but this raised fears of network instability and potential splits, since differing block sizes could cause disagreements and forks. Bitcoin Core SegWit was actually something that I think it was the only thing that was put forward from the small blockers. And this focused on more a technical upgrade to the existing Bitcoin that we have or had. Satoshi's Bitcoin. So all it was an upgrade that improved scalability without raising block size the block size significantly by changing how transaction data was secured, i.e. the signatures have the signatures off-chain or something similar to that. Many critics feared SegWit was too complicated, delaying bigger block size increases or giving too much control to the developers. And then there was another blockchain that was recommended, and this was SegWit 2x, and this combined SegWit, which the small blockers put forward, and it planned it with a 2 megabyte block size increase as a middle ground. Despite some support, it was actually cancelled due to fears that they didn't have enough community consensus and it could lead to a fork. At the end, fears about decentralization, security, network stability shaped each and every project, support and opposition. The cautious approach of the Bitcoin Core software upgrades stayed as main Bitcoin, while Bitcoin Cash took a larger block path, splitting the community by offering a choice. The Bitcoin developers, so these people thought that they actually ran Bitcoin. They work on Bitcoin Core. Now, what is Bitcoin Core? Bitcoin Core is the software that the nodes run, that the miners, etc., what they run, and they played a central role in the Bitcoin size wars by carefully evaluating proposals to increase the block size. Most of the developers opposed a large immediate increase because they were concerned that it could harm decentralization by making it harder for individuals to run full nodes. Remember, these people, they didn't have a financial incentive. They were almost cyberpunks. They were on Bitcoin, they were working for Bitcoin, they were using Bitcoin, they believed in Bitcoin for Satoshi's vision. Some of them supported solutions like SegWit, a second layer, and some others supported second layer technologies. Some developers like Gavin Anderson disagreed and pushed for the large blockers like we discussed earlier. Like we discussed earlier. So in the end, what happened? So we've spoken about the need for Bitcoin to scale. For Bitcoin to scale, we've spoken about the different projects that were put through, the different people who were involved in trying to decide what was best for Bitcoin. Satoshi wasn't around. So in the end, what happened? In the end, the block size wars resulted in a split in the Bitcoin community which couldn't be rectified. Something had to happen. Both sides had to be pleased. The original Bitcoin network so for the small blockers, the original network kept the 1 megabit block size limit, but adopted softwares like SegWit to improve scalability and the network security and decentralization. So that's how the small blockers won. They kept Bitcoin, Satoshi's Bitcoin, and they just put an update on it, which the validators ran. Meanwhile, the big blockers who wanted bigger blocks and they wanted to fork Bitcoin and create different blockchains, etc., they ended up creating Bitcoin Cash. So this is where Bitcoin Cash comes from, which increases the block size to 8 megabytes to allow more transactions directly on the blockchain. This split gave users and miners the choice to choose between the two different versions for Bitcoin's future. One focused on being cautious and technical upgrades, the other focused on large blocks, immediate scaling, and incentives. Both coins, both blockchains continue to exist today, each with their own community, each with their own supporters. Now, Bitmain, which I spoke about before, which was a very large exchange, they put something like 800 million US dollars behind Bitcoin Cash. Now, when Bitcoin Cash was launched in August 2017, it created a hard fork of Bitcoin. This meant that anyone holding Bitcoin at the time automatically received the same amount of Bitcoin Cash. So 1 Bitcoin Cash for every 1 Bitcoin that they owned. However, after launch, the price of Bitcoin Cash quickly deteriorated or declined and separated from Bitcoins. While Bitcoin continued to rise and become more widely adopted, Bitcoin Cash's price became much lower and far more much volatile. Bitcoin Cash faced challenges, gaining the same level of trust, of adoption, and network adoption as Bitcoin itself. And it was a very, I'll just quickly talk about SegWit, and then I'll tell you about some of the things that happened to average day users at the time. SegWit, which obviously was for the small blockers won, by the way. SegWit was a solution mainly supported by the small blockers that was it was a compromise. Those who wanted to keep the block size limited to 1 megabyte to preserve Bitcoin's decentralization and security. Oh, hi, Dawood. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining. So with SegWit, the small blockers, they had SegWit, which was just a upgrade to the network, to Bitcoin, that's Satoshi's chain of Bitcoin. It preserved Bitcoin's decentralization and security instead of increasing its block size. It was implemented onto the original blockchain, Bitcoin blockchain, in August 2017. It was a soft fork, meaning it was a software upgrade to the network. This upgrade allowed Bitcoin to handle more transactions per block and fix some of the technical issues because it did have a bug. All this while keeping the capacity of the older version of the software. So we spoke about the 1 megabyte limit. With SegWit, they were able to increase how many transactions were able to go into that limit. SegWit helped Bitcoin scale more efficiently without increasing the size directly, which was a major part of the block size debate. It also paved the way for second layer solutions like the Lightning Network to make Bitcoin transactions faster and cheaper. Okay, so at the time, for people like us, oh, thank you, gentlemen. Please do hit the likes. Yay. Okay, so for people like us at the time, 2016 was a halving year. So we had so this happened in 2015, which was a recovery year, followed by 2016, which was the halving year, and and then 2017, which was the bull run year. People like us were shilled Bitcoin Cash. And like I said, Bitmain spent something like 800 million US dollars investing into Bitcoin Cash, marketing it and helping it grow, etc. Even though Bitcoin Cash is a better payments system, it did not perform well financially. So just imagine you're in 2017, you've got 100, I don't know, 10,000 US dollars into Bitcoin. And somebody sells you Bitcoin Cash, which is a faster, better, quicker, whatever blockchain, and it's got Bitcoin in the name, and you think it's basically Bitcoin on steroids. You put all your money into Bitcoin, you actually lost a huge amount of money. If you had put 1,000 US dollars into Bitcoin Cash instead of keeping it into Bitcoin, on the 1st of August 2017, your 1,000 US dollars would now be worth 2,096 US dollars. If you had left that Bitcoin, if you had left your £1,000 into Bitcoin in 2017, today it'll be worth 40,335 US dollars. A lot of people lost a lot of money when Bitcoin Cash came out, and that effectively ended any other the large blockers from putting out any other chain, for them putting out any other blockchain, any other anything second to Bitcoin. It ended that, and it ended sort of the block size wars, if that makes sense, because so many people lost a lot of money. The all-time high for Bitcoin Cash was 4,000 US dollars. At the same time, Bitcoin was a lot more, and the all-time low for Bitcoin was 77 US dollars. I think nowadays it's trading around about 500 US dollars. I'm not entirely sure. But this is the thing. There is no better technology than Bitcoin itself, even with its shortcomings. Yes, Bitcoin is definitely king. Oh, thank you. I do appreciate that. We're going to end it here. So now you've got a little bit of an idea of what happened in the community, in the Bitcoin community in 2000 and, just before the second, in 2015 to 2017. My hair is still wet. Oh my gosh. But coming up this week, I do have, and we're going to leave it there. There is no other alternative to Bitcoin. We have layer 2 solutions. We have everything. We have layer 2 solutions. We have so many different altcoins, but there is no other coin that is like Bitcoin. And I do really, really, really feel sorry for all the people who got confused back in the day and they put their money into Bitcoin Cash. There was a lot of ego that was going around. Miners thought that they controlled Bitcoin. The developers thought that they controlled Bitcoin. The exchanges thought that they controlled Bitcoin. And they were just throwing their weight around. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there for today. On Thursday, we do have another crypto story coming out. Could you please like the here it says there's 13 likes, but I'm very sure that this 29. I do apologize. 29 likes. And I think there was over 50 people watching. Although I know that there's some people on X. I don't know how many people are watching here. So just very quickly, I'll see you all on Thursday for Cassius, who did do the Bitcoin Bestie song with Randy. I'll be telling his crypto story. I was not expecting it. I really, really was not expecting his crypto story. He's been on the cover of the Wall Street Journal. Billionaires are trying to get onto the cover of the Wall Street Journal, and Cassius has been on there. Just very quickly, I will be in the Discord now. So if anybody wants to come and say hi or ask any questions, they're more than welcome to. And then second to that, next week is the 1st year anniversary of the channel. So don't miss that live stream. We'll be doing something really cool for that live stream. I'm not entirely sure what yet, but we will be. So that's brilliant. Thank you so much for all being here. It says here, yeah, it says 50 here, but I'm pretty sure there's people watching on X. I will see you all on Thursday and then next week. Goodbye.